Dear partners and colleagues, thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this meeting. We are in this together. These were the words used by the UN Secretary General to introduce his report on human rights and COVID-19. He noted that human rights cannot be an afterthought in times of crisis, and in many ways the COVID-19 pandemic and its consequences present one of the biggest global crises in our lifetime. It is a public health emergency, an economic crisis, a social crisis, a development crisis, and it is also a human rights crisis. The impact of COVID-19 poses a far-reaching threat to human rights and sustainable development across the globe. The pandemic has magnified deep-rooted inequalities and discrimination with an alarmingly disproportionate impact on the most marginalized groups. It exposes weaknesses in countries' political, economic, and social systems, and its impacts are likely to continue creating unprecedented pressure on the social compact in developed and developing countries alike. Faced with a challenge of this magnitude, principled approaches grounded in human rights norms and standards must be central to COVID-19 response and recovery. Why? Because they put people front and center and lead to better outcomes, preserving social cohesion, human dignity, and ensuring that everyone, especially the most vulnerable, have a say in and benefit from the responses put in place. The human rights-based approach to development provides us with clear guideposts as we navigate this uncharted territory. We need to take a stand when emergency measures are used to restrict civic space, free speech, and other fundamental freedoms. We need to remind governments that speaking out about difficulties is crucial to resolving them, and that human rights principles make policies more effective, not less. We need to advocate the prioritization of goals and targets that will reduce inequalities, as well as increase public spending on healthcare and social protection. Working together, we also need to ensure that we connect all the dots. The Secretary General's call to action on human rights, the UN's guidance and framework on socio-economic responses to COVID-19, and our work to deliver on the SDGs are interlinked. By joining them up, we can help to amplify their outcomes. My office is working across the world to heighten the global, regional, national, and local focus on leaving no one behind, equality and non-discrimination, and all human rights. Let me offer a few examples. Since the beginning of the pandemic, we have issued detailed and concrete guidance on states of emergencies and the needs and rights of people deprived of their liberty: migrants, women, LGBTI people, older people, and people with disabilities in the context of COVID-19. We have also developed 10 key human rights indicators aligned with existing data frameworks for the SDGs to ensure clarity about the situation and needs of vulnerable groups. We're working to ensure all UN operations integrating human rights goals and principles. And we are translating this global guidance into concrete action at the regional, country, and local levels. For instance, in Honduras, following OHCHR's recommendations, the government amended the state of emergency decree excluding restrictions to freedom of expression and addressing provisions on incommunicado detention. In Kenya, we are monitoring the human rights impacts of COVID-19 in informal settlements and our findings on specific issues such as the right to water, increased sexual and gender-based violence, and excessive use of force when enforcing the curfew have informed the work of the UN country team, the government, and local partners. In Cambodia, our long-standing work, land, and housing rights has enabled us to work with key officials to help prevent forced evictions that may heighten families' vulnerability to COVID-19. Here are some concrete ways we can chart a sustainable path for building back better, grounded in a human rights-based approach. We should call for and support extensive economic and social measures to lessen the shocks of the pandemic and quell further growth of inequalities. A leave no one behind lens is essential in designing stimulus packages to ensure they focus on the poorest and most marginalized, such as workers in the informal economy, instead of exacerbating poverty and discrimination. Support from international financial institutions should be monitored to ensure it reaches the most vulnerable groups. Transparency and accountability are key. Countries will only be able to build back better if there are sustained and increasing investments in public health, social protection, adequate housing, access to water and sanitation, and other economic and social rights, with a focus on those most affected. In all COVID-19 responses and recovery measures, countries should be encouraged to prioritizing goals and targets that aim to reduce inequalities. In doing so, they should be guided by the emphasis of SDG 16 on good governance, transparency, and participation. Building back better for everyone, without discrimination, should be the goal that motivates all our actions and all our pledges, including financial ones. Remember the global protests that predated COVID-19. They were a clear sign that we were not on the right track. We cannot afford to return to the systems that created our vulnerability to the pandemic. These past days and weeks, we have witnessed new demonstrations by people standing up for human rights, anti-racism, and equality. They are also sending us a clear sign that we need to step up and do more. We look forward to working with you so that together we help uplift everyone through respect and protection of human rights, leaving no one behind and reaching those most marginalized first. Thank you for your support in ensuring that my office can carry out this work effectively.